welcome to Rendering Insights. In this video, we're going to draw a 1950 Mercury Custom. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe below. All right, this is the car we're going to be drawing. It's 1950 Merc. It's fully chopped and customized with these big cruiser skirts. But we're going to take a look on how to render this, actually in both Adobe Illustrator and then bring it into Photoshop and build this drawing in layers. All right, let's get started. Okay, here we are in Adobe Illustrator. The first thing we needed to do was develop our line drawing, the basic lines of the car. So I found a photograph on the internet that I liked of a 50 Merc that had the right chop to it and had the right perspective. I like this 3/4 rear view for this car, big fat car, and went ahead and scanned that in and used that as a template to draw in our basic lines. Again, in this video we're not going to demonstrate how to draw every line with the pen tool, but that's what I used. And also I found on a separate photograph, found a picture of this big old glass cruiser skirt, which was common in the day. And as huge as that thing is, that's exactly what that looks like. Put that in. The other detail that we changed was this tail light. This is actually a shoebox Ford tail light with the blue dot in it, Frenched in. That's what is going to be used on this build. So we want to go ahead and put that in this drawing now to start with. All right, but I like the way this rear window laid down on this chop. It's accurate to the way that this car is going to be built. All right, so those are the basic lines. All of this is on one layer that we'll bring in. The front wheel and tire I decided to build in a separate layer. This is what that looks like. This wheel is pretty complicated, so I just thought it'd be helpful maybe to have that on a separate layer that we can build over in Photoshop. Also, for the mirror on the driver's side, wanted to use something other than just a stock mirror, something more modern. This is like a Camaro, modern Camaro side mirror. So put that on a separate layer because we'll duplicate that also once we start doing color and build that up just like we will the rest of the car. The only thing missing is the shadow of the car. Decided to put that on a separate layer. There's not much to it. It's going to peek out from the front wheel there and come around and disappear into the car. This is what I came up with on the shadow. Comes around the front, drops around, scoots around with that that big old skirt would do, and then dropped in where about what shadow that rear bumper would create. But once the shadow gets underneath the car, you're not going to see that because this shadow layer is going to be underneath all of our color layers. So we can just run a line here to trap in that color when we fill it, but it's not going to show. Just this part's going to peek out, if that makes sense. All right, this is all the line work that we did in Illustrator. We'll bring that into Photoshop and start coloring. All right, here we go. All right, we're in Photoshop. We've brought in our line drawing from Illustrator. And like always, I want to go ahead and make about 6 copies of this layer over on the right. Just drag them down to the plus sign and make a bunch of duplicates and just stack them on top of each other and lock them all except that bottom one. All right, we're going to start playing with that bottom one. The first thing I like to do, as you know, is this is a practice, is to make a white layer. Ideally what I do is I go in and I fill all these areas in white just to give us a good basis, a good foundation to build our colors on top of. All right, so that's what we've done. We've gone ahead and built this white layer. And we'll add our other color layers on top of that. Okay, we'll go ahead and open our second layer, drop that on top, and put in our basic colors. This is a red car with some metallics in it, but we need a good base red color for the car, so this is what this looks like. Impressive, huh? Look at this bumper. We just put some gray in there, and look at our tail lights. Just put a little bit darker red, gray with around the outside on that frame, in our basic color in wheel tire colors. That dark gray, black out here, even the gray on the bumper. I just left the white on the glass right now, and we'll render that later. Again, that's the benefit of that white. We'll use some of that peeking through for our rendering. So that's our first real color layer. We've put in our base colors. Now we're going to open another color layer, another line layer that we'll stack on top of here and start playing with some shadows. And again, on this car, instead of using black, I went ahead and picked kind of a burgundy color, kind of a deep ruby burgundy color to start shading in here. What I did was selected some of these panels, like this front fender, this lower door panel, and this rear in here. And then with the magic wand tool, and then with the brush tool, open it up and real lightly start brushing some of that burgundy in here. And this is what I came up with on that next layer. How rich that is. It's crazy what that does. Being very selective on these panels, one at a time. Did the skirt in a separate panel. Just start brushing, obviously heavier on top, and then allowing this basic red color to show through here, just lightly brushed in below. Look what effect that did. Same with these panels here. You can go ahead and just brush on top and real lightly down below around that body line on the roof line. Let's see. Okay, on our next color layer, we're going to put in a little bit of black, just riching things up a little bit. Starting to look pretty dark, but it'll come back when we put highlights in it. This is what I've done on this layer. Selected these layers again and start brushing some black in here. And also on this layer, we gone ahead and worked on this bumper a little bit. On the previous layer, went ahead and did some color, selected this panel, and literally just put some warm gray down below and some light blue up on top. Very simple. It doesn't look like a real piece of chrome, but it's just our foundation. And then on that next layer, we put the black in on the side of the car. Gone in here kind of tight in this layer, selected with that magic wand tool, and just brushed in some black. It's actually some dark gray in here, just creating some kind of horizon, some mountains or whatever. You get up close to this and it's kind of funny. It looks more like a sandstorm or something going on. But when you step back, it works. You went a little bit darker on the blues. See that? Just riching that up on that reflection. Start playing with some shadows in that Frenching on the car. Little by little, just start working things in. The shadow in the front fender and the fender well. All right. On the next color layer, start playing with some highlights because it's starting to get pretty dark in here. Oh yeah, on the glass. Put some shading in there on that glass too. Each layer, see, slowly building that up. Put some shading there. Did a little more up here. Created some shadows underneath these rails. On this next layer, like I say, playing with some highlights. This is what I did. Really simple, knowing that we're going to have a little bit of reflection in here. So selected this skirt layer in here and just lightly brushed in what might be some little reflections in here with some tan color. See that? Same thing up on the hood and on that front fender, just to get a little bit of reflection to lighten that up a little bit, just to brighten it up. Same with that front bumper. And also on these body lines, just got in tight, selected these areas and just brushed in a little bit of white in there. Just a little bit what that would look like. Selected that door separately, brushed in a little bit of there. Selected this lower panel, just kissed that right there. Front fender and hood, just hit the edge of that. See that? Very lightly, not much to it at all. Well, Then I decided to want to go ahead and richen this color up a little bit and got a really dark burgundy and just started playing a little bit. Went in here and selected these body panels with that magic wand tool and brushed in some more color and darkened it up again. Almost sounds like I'm arguing with myself, but that's just the process of building a rendering. I like the richness of that, what that did for the car. Those are all the line layers that we've brought in. Now we're going to start playing with some highlights on top before we get to the mirror and the shadow in the background. All right. On top, on this layer, on a separate layer, start playing with some highlights. See what I did? Look on the bumper and on the tail lights, those details, and around that Frenching. And look a little bit on the roof line over here, just a little bit. We know where being on this crown on the roof that there's going to be a little bit of highlight there and a little bit back here on this deck lid seam. Okay, that's all I did on that layer. Pretty simple. I build with a lot of layers. On the next one, I added some more highlights. It's time to start brightening this thing up. So this is what I did on this layer. And I spent some time trying to figure out where these highlights would be and how much they would show up. I went ahead and dropped these guys in here. And it looks a little funny when you focus on that alone, but when you step back and look at everything together, it makes sense. Look on this rear light back here, on this rear glass. I just put a streak in here and then just made a hot spot and started playing in some other areas. A little bit of reflection there. Okay. One of the hardest things I did on this drawing was trying to figure out some kind of a highlight down the side of the car, and it took me a few times. But in this layer, you see that real light white streak in there? I literally took that brush tool, dialed it way down small with almost no opacity at all, and just drug that in there. And it took me a few times to get it right, but I like what it did. It actually created a highlight that would be a little more realistic when you walk up on the car and see that reflection in there. On another layer, did a few more little things. I thought after I had this streak layer in here, I just needed to brighten it up right back in here in line with everything else. So that's what I did, just brushed that in and added a little more in this reflection on that part of the car. All right. Now that's all the paint rendering on the car, but remember that mirror that we drew separately? I started bringing that in, and on this first mirror layer, let me get a little tighter in here. I just dropped in the color, literally put in that same base red, put in kind of a light gray blue in here, and just ran some streaks in here that might have some reflection on this window, the side glass. On the second mirror layer, I made a few copies of that, stacked them on top of each other again. On the second line layer for this mirror, start playing with some shadows. See what that does? Selected this section at first, brushed that in here, and then selected this section and just kind of brushed in where I thought that shadow would be underneath this part. And then on the next layer, line layer for the mirrors, brushed in some more shadows. Just darken things up a little bit. Did the same exercise, but just darken it up. All right. Then needed some highlights in there. So on the next layer for the mirror, just a little bit of brightness on top. So it kind of looks like it's in the same world as the hood and the front fender and the roof on this car. All right. The last thing to do on this mirror is just a few more bright highlights. So on a separate layer with no lines, I just came in here with the white and real small size paintbrush and just brushed in a little bit of highlights. All right. So there's our basic car. One of the things that's still missing is our shadow. Remember we drew that shadow with that crazy line? It just kind of followed the shape of the car around the bumper, and then it dramatically dropped across and met up at the front. Remember when we put that layer underneath our color layers, it's not going to matter. So this is the shadow layer brought in. Oop, I lied. Here it is. I selected that area and used the black down, I think it was about 25%, and just started brushing that in and went really solid up in the front, and then just lighten it up a little bit in the back so it's not as intense. It's heavy under the car and a little bit lighter back here. All right. The only thing left to do is play with our background. Now, on this car, I love how bright this red car is. It's cool. It just jumps out. So we don't want anything in the background to take away, to distract from the rest of the car. So I just did a gradation, basically from white to a gray to the top. This is what that looks like. It's pretty simple, but just to create some interest in the background, so it just doesn't have a solid white background. And then decided to put some borders on this. First, I played with a gray border around there. Remember, like we've done before, this border is actually one color. You get rid of that gradation and you realize that this is actually one color. It's just kind of a warm gray, but with that shaded background, this border changes colors, which is pretty cool. It's kind of an illusion. And decided to put a little bit of red in another border just to, I don't know, create some interest in here. All right, well, there's our completed drawing. 1950 Mercury Custom. Hope you enjoyed that. Well, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, please check out our other videos available on Rendering Insights.